Mainek plastic key chair pay betha tha, courthouse k bahar, hathin, comp rehi, te k, inhamda, ronin k, nich dabana, pada, dabi phone, payek, text aka say, bunde ki teraf, se yise, mainoth, salse bat, nahi ki thi, surfit na likatha, main yahan hun, gawahi din ayahun. Teen Mahin Pillay, Main Surf College, Key USS Class, QA Warehouse Dad, The Yeast Sab Hasty, Thay Fatah, Hoodie, Kuda Hoodie Windshield, Du Betty, Akila, Palraha, Admi, Jai's Koi Group Project, Main, Lena Nahi, Chata, Tha, Q. Leakin Joe's Secret USS Dincourt, Main, Kolnwala, Tha, USN, Mary Pori, Zindagi, Ka, Matt Labhai, Badal Dina Tha. My name isn't actually David in real life. I'm changing it for obvious reasons. But everything else here happened pretty much the way I'm about to tell it. I was sitting in a plastic chair outside a courtroom, hands shaking so bad I had to sit on them, when my phone buzzed with a text from a man I hadn't spoken to in almost 8 years. It just said, "I'm here. I'm testifying." I stared at that message for a solid minute before I even understood who it was from. 3 months earlier, I didn't even know this man remembered my name. 3 months before that, I was just the broke guy in the back row of Intro to Business Statistics that everybody snickered at. I want to back up and tell this whole thing from the start, because I still don't fully know how to feel about how it ended. I'm 27. I have twin daughters, Mia and Callie. They're 7 now. My wife Renee died in a car accident almost 2 years ago, hit by someone running a red light on her way home from her shift at the hospital where she worked as a phlebotomist. I don't really talk about that part much because it still doesn't feel real some days, but it's the reason everything else in this story happened, so I have to mention it. Before any of that, back in high school, I was actually a pretty serious basketball player. Not like local legends serious, but serious enough that by my senior year, I had a scholarship offer sitting on the table from a mid-major program to states over. I wasn't going to go pro or anything. I want to be clear about that. I wasn't that good, but it was going to be a free ride. Tuition, books, housing, all of it. For a kid whose parents couldn't have paid for community college, let alone a 4-year school. Then, in the regional semifinal, I planted wrong going for a rebound and tore my ACL, completely blew it out. I remember the sound more than the pain, honestly. This pop that I felt in my teeth somehow. I found out later, years later actually, that the assistant coach who'd been sent to scout me that specific game was sitting about 10 rows up when it happened. He watched the whole scholarship walk out of the gym on a stretcher. I didn't know that part at the time. I just knew that after surgery and 6 months of physical therapy, nobody from that program ever called again. My high school coach told me these things happen, and that was pretty much the end of the conversation. I was 18 and I figured that's just how life worked sometimes. I met Renee at a community college 2 years later. When I'd finally saved up enough working construction to take a couple classes part-time, she was in my anatomy class, of all things, and she used to make fun of the fact that I still walked with a little bit of a limp on cold days. I got married when I was 23. The twins came a year after that. Money was always tight, but we made it work. She was the one who actually had the stable job with benefits. I did whatever paid, mostly warehouse work and some contracting. Then she was gone, and I had 2 4-year-olds, and a mortgage payment I couldn't cover on my own and absolutely no plan. I moved us into a smaller 2-bedroom apartment. I took a full-time job loading trucks on the night shift at a regional distribution center. 11 at night to 7 in the morning, so I could be home during the day for the girls. My mother-in-law Diane watched them a couple nights a week when I picked up extra shifts, which I want to mention because it matters later. She was involved, even though things between us were never exactly warm. About a year ago, I decided I needed to actually build towards something instead of just surviving paycheck to paycheck forever. I enrolled at the community college, this time going for an actual associate's in business, with a plan to transfer eventually. I was taking 2 classes at a time, working nights, sleeping maybe 5 hours if the girls didn't wake up, showing up to a 9 a.m. class in the same gray hoodie I'd worn twice that week already because doing laundry felt like a luxury I didn't have time for. I want to be honest, I wasn't invisible in that classroom. I was 27, sitting next to a bunch of 19-year-olds, and I looked like exactly what I was, a tired guy who didn't belong. I heard the comments. Not always to my face, but enough. One kid named Trevor referred to me as warehouse dad to his friend, not even bothering to lower his voice much, like it was just a fact about me, like a nickname that had already stuck. During group project signups, I watched entire tables quietly fill up before anyone would look at me. One girl, I'll call her Jess, once said to a friend right next to me, "Not even that quietly, I just don't want to get stuck being the one who has to explain everything to him, like I was slow instead of just exhausted." I never said anything back. What was I going to say? I needed this degree. I didn't have room in my life for a dignity battle with a 19-year-old. I just kept my head down, did the work, picked up my girls from Diane's, made dinner, did it again the next day. The rising pressure came in around midterms. My car's windshield had a crack running across it that I couldn't afford to fix. My landlord raised rent by $80 a month. I was 2 assignments behind because I'd been picking up overtime shifts to cover the difference. I remember sitting in my car in the parking lot before an exam, just staring at the dashboard, doing math in my head that didn't add up no matter how many times I ran it. That was around the time the pickup game happened. It was a dumb, small thing. A guy in my stats class, Marcus, was short a player for a lunchtime 3-on-3 at the campus rec center and basically begged me to fill in because I was standing nearby waiting for my next class to start. I told him no twice. I hadn't played in years, my knee still barked at me in cold weather, and I wasn't in the mood to be laughed at on a basketball court on top of everywhere else. But he kept at it, and honestly I think some part of me just wanted to move my body and think about something other than bills for 20 minutes. I was rusty for maybe the first 2 minutes. Then something clicked back in, this old muscle memory I didn't know I still had, and I stopped thinking and just played. I ended up with something like 22 points in a pickup game that didn't matter to anyone, cutting past guys who were a decade younger than me like they were standing still. A kid on the sideline filmed part of it on his phone, laughing, saying something like, "Yo, warehouse dad's got moves" as a joke, and posted a clip online with some caption. I don't even remember exactly. I didn't think much of it. I figured maybe 30 people would see it and forget about it by the next day. About a week later, I got a message on a social platform I barely used, from a name I hadn't seen in 8 years. Coach Halloran. He'd been the assistant coach scouting me that night in high school, the one sitting in the stands when my knee gave out. He was now an assistant coach at a university about 40 minutes from where I lived. He said he'd seen the clip, somebody had tagged him in it as a joke because of the caption, and he recognized my name instantly. We ended up on the phone. I remember standing in my kitchen at 11 at night, girls already asleep, half expecting this to be some kind of prank. "I need you to know something," he said. "I was at that game. I saw it happen in real time. I want to be honest with you, I should have called you afterward. I should have at least checked on you. Instead, the program moved on to the next kid on the board, and I let it happen." I've thought about that more than you'd probably believe. I didn't say anything for a second. Then I said, "So what? You feel guilty? And now you want to fix it 8 years later because of a pickup game video?" He said he wanted to help. Maybe there was still something he could do. Connect me with people. Help me get back into the game somehow. I told him no. I told him I wasn't interested in being anybody's redemption arc, that I had 2 kids and a night shift, and I didn't need anyone's guilt project. I hung up feeling more angry than I expected to. It wasn't really about him. It was 8 years of quietly accepting that nobody was ever coming back for me. And here was proof that somebody could have, and just didn't. 2 weeks after that, both girls got sick at the same time. Some respiratory thing that hit right as they started daycare that fall. It landed during the exact week I had 2 midterms. Diane was out of town visiting her sister and couldn't help. I had no one else. I remember standing in the pediatrician's office holding Callie, who was struggling to breathe right. On the phone, simultaneously trying to explain to my professor why I might miss an exam, and the whole time doing math on whether missing a shift at work meant I couldn't cover rent that month. I missed the exam, missed the shift too, actually both nights. My manager wasn't happy about it, said if it happened again, there'd be consequences. I remember sitting in my car outside the apartment that night after the girls had finally fallen asleep. Just sitting there in the dark, not crying exactly, just kind of hollowed out, thinking maybe I couldn't actually do this, the school thing. Maybe I needed to just quit and go back to working 2 jobs and forget about any of it. That was the lowest point. I want to be honest about that part, instead of making it sound more dramatic than it was. It wasn't some big cinematic breakdown. It was just quiet exhaustion, the kind where you start wondering if you're the problem. The next part is where things shifted, and it wasn't some big miracle. It was just a person doing something decent. Jess, the same girl who'd made that comment about not wanting to explain things to me, ended up calling me about a group project deadline that same week, annoyed I hadn't responded to messages. I picked up mostly out of exhaustion and just told her flatly, "My kids are sick. I've been at the hospital. I'm not ignoring you on purpose." There was a long pause on her end. Then she said, kind of quietly, "Oh, I didn't realize you had kids that young." She showed up at my apartment 2 days later, uninvited, with a bag from a pharmacy and a container of soup her mom had apparently sent her home with. I remember standing at the door confused, half expecting this to be some kind of joke. She said, "I felt like garbage after that call. I wanted to actually help instead of just feeling bad about it." She ended up sitting with the girls for a couple hours so I could sleep, which I hadn't done more than 4 hours a night in almost 2 weeks. While she was there, Mia dragged out an old shoebox I kept under my bed, the kind of thing kids find when they're bored, and inside it was newspaper clippings from high school games. My old jersey number circled in one article, and an unopened scholarship offer letter I'd never been able to bring myself to throw away or reread. Jess saw it laid out on the coffee table. She got quiet, and then she said, "Wait, this is you? This is who they were joking about in that video?" I told her the short version. She looked genuinely upset, not performatively, actually upset, and admitted she was the one who'd originally shared the pickup game clip in a group chat as a joke before it got picked up further. Oh, she said she didn't know it would go anywhere beyond that. It did go somewhere, though. Small sports blog that covers local college and rec league stuff. Somehow got hold of the clip along with a screenshot of my old high school stats. Ran a short piece with a headline calling me the broke single dad who still balls like a pro. Was treating my whole life like a feel-good curiosity. It got shared a decent amount locally, as people I hadn't talked to in years started commenting on it. It felt less like a compliment and more like being put on display. That would have been embarrassing, but survivable on its own. The actual problem came when Diane, my late wife's mother, saw it. Diane and I had never had an easy relationship. She'd never fully forgiven me, I think, for the fact that Renee had chosen a broke construction worker over the kind of stable life she thought her daughter deserved. After Renee died, Diane helped with the girls, but there was always this undertone, comments about how tired I looked, whether the girls were eating enough vegetables, whether I was keeping up with things. When that article went around framing me as some struggling, unstable single dad working nights and barely scraping by, she used it, along with some other things, to file paperwork questioning my custody arrangement, arguing I was financially unstable and couldn't provide adequate structure for the girls. I want to be clear, this wasn't some evil scheme out of a movie. Diane genuinely believed, or at least told herself, that she was doing right by her granddaughters. That almost made it worse. I wasn't fighting a villain. I was fighting someone who loved the girls too. Just from a position of believing money and stability mattered more than anything else, more than the fact that I was the one raising them every single day. The hearing got scheduled about 5 weeks out. I remember sitting with a legal aid attorney, a tired but kind woman named Patricia, going over my finances, my work schedule, everything, and feeling like my entire life was being laid out on a table to be judged by strangers. That's the part where Coach Halloran comes back into it, and I still don't totally know what to make of it. Somehow, word had reached him, maybe through Jess. Maybe through the original blog post being shared around that I was in the middle of a custody fight. He reached out again, and this time I didn't hang up on him, asked if he could testify as a character witness. I told him honestly I didn't see how that would help. This wasn't about basketball. He said he understood that, but he wanted to speak to something specific, and he wouldn't tell me exactly what over the phone. At the hearing, when he got up to speak, I genuinely didn't know what he was going to say. He talked about that night 8 years ago, the injury, his own regret about never following up, but then he said something I hadn't expected at all. He said that after the video went around and he reached out to me the first time, he'd actually offered me something concrete. Not just an apology, a walk-on tryout opportunity at his university's program. Unofficial, informal, but real. Not once, but a second time, when he offered again a few weeks later. After I'd calmed down, and he thought maybe I'd reconsider, he looked at the judge and said he turned it down both times because practice schedule would have conflicted with school pickup for his daughters. He told me that directly, said he wasn't going to be somewhere at 4 p.m. that wasn't his kid's school. I want the court to understand what kind of choice that actually was. This man had, for the first time in 8 years, a real door back into something he'd lost as a teenager. and he closed it himself twice because of 2 7-year-olds. I hadn't told Patricia that part. I hadn't really thought it was relevant, or maybe I just hadn't wanted to think about it too hard. Honestly, some quiet part of me still stung from turning it down. The judge asked me directly why I hadn't mentioned it. I said because it wasn't a hard decision. I wasn't turning down my kids for basketball. There wasn't really a decision to make. I'm not going to pretend the hearing turned into some dramatic movie scene after that. It was still slow, still paperwork heavy, still uncomfortable, but the ruling came back in my favor. The judge specifically noted the financial aid and work records showing consistent effort and stability, along with what she called demonstrated prioritization of the children's needs over personal opportunity, which I guess is a formal way of saying what Coach Halloran had already said in plainer words. Diane and I still don't have an easy relationship, honestly. She apologized, sort of in the parking lot afterward, said she just wanted to make sure the girls were okay and didn't know how else to do that. I told her I understood because in some strange way I did. She still sees the girls regularly. We're civil. That part isn't wrapped up neatly, and I don't think it ever fully will be. As for school, I finished that semester barely, with a C in the class I'd missed the exam for, and BS everywhere else. Jess and I ended up being friendly, not close friends exactly. But she stopped treating me like background noise. A couple other classmates did too, once the story got around campus in the normal way stories do. Trevor, the warehouse dad guy, actually apologized to me directly one day after class, which surprised me more than almost anything else that happened. I didn't go back to basketball. Coach Halloran and I still talk sometimes. Not about tryouts, just talk. My knee still aches when it's cold. I still work nights. I still drive a car with a cracked windshield, though I finally got it fixed a few months ago. What I keep coming back to is that everyone acted like the big reveal was that I used to be some almost athlete, like that was the secret that mattered. But that was never really the secret. The actual secret was just how much I was quietly giving up every single day without telling anybody. And how invisible that kind of sacrifice is compared to something people can put in a headline. I still don't totally know how I feel about the whole thing, if I'm honest. Whether I'm proud of turning that offer down, or if some part of me will always wonder. I guess I'd ask, if you were in my position, would you have taken the tryout? Or is there really no version of that decision where the answer isn't obvious?